Welcome, today's story is full of drama. Like and subscribe to stay updated. Let's get started.
Have you ever wondered whether your life is predetermined before you're even born or if it unfolds randomly through a series of choices made by you or others that shape your existence? This question has puzzled humanity for as long as we've existed, yet no definitive answer has been found. My name is Nathan Carter, and like everyone else, I've developed my own perspective on this mystery. I grew up as an only child in a hardworking middle-class family. My parents, Robert and Evelyn Carter, juggled their jobs while I focused on school. Although I wouldn't call myself a stellar student, I managed to hold my own academically. However, there was one area where I truly thrived: computers. My journey into the world of technology began when I met Ethan Wells, a skinny 9-year-old who moved in next door with his family. Ethan and I hit it off instantly, and he became my best friend for the 7 years we lived as neighbors. Ethan's dad, Gerald, was a self-proclaimed computer enthusiast. Though his career took a different path, Gerald had always dreamed of teaching and saw an opportunity in sharing his passion with his son. Ethan, in turn, shared what he learned with me, and I quickly developed a knack for it. Seeing my interest, Gerald began teaching both of us, thrilled to have two eager students. As our skills grew, Gerald made us swear never to use our knowledge for harmful purposes. That promise marked the beginning of an exciting and transformative journey. 5 years into my friendship with the Wells family, my life took a devastating turn when I lost my mother in a car accident. The grief was overwhelming, but Ethan, always the thoughtful friend, recognized that I needed a distraction. He convinced his dad to accelerate our lessons, immersing me in the world of advanced technology and helping me find a way to cope with the pain. By the time Ethan's family had to move away, which, although following far behind my mother's death, was still the second worst day of my life to date, I was able to do things with computers that most people couldn't even dream about. It was the summer between my junior and senior year of high school, and without Ethan being there to help occupy my free time, I desperately needed to find something else to do. My father and I argued relentlessly about me getting a part-time job. Dad feared that once I got a taste of what it was like to have a steady income, college would lose some of its appeal. He complained that too many kids take time off from their schooling in order to either find themselves or save up money, and then life gets in the way, preventing them from ever returning to their education. In all actuality, I don't think my dad minded the fact that I wanted to work, but it was the paycheck he was scared I'd get hooked on. We finally managed to reach a compromise when I suggested that I look into some volunteer work for the summer and reminded him how good stuff like that would look on college admittance applications. One would think that the offer of free labor would be in very high demand, especially with the declining economy. The truth of the matter was that there were really not that many opportunities to choose from. In the end, there was one detail that, although well below my skill level, was still somewhat worthy of inquiring about. It seemed that, with budget cuts, the state needed someone to upgrade software on a few of their older computers. The work itself would actually be of no challenge to someone like me whatsoever, but the real shocker was that the computers they wanted worked on just happened to be located in a medium-security women's prison. I debated with myself as to whether or not I should even apply for the position, but figured I could at least go through the interview process and then see what they had to say. Naturally, I sailed right past the computer portion of their examination, but the hoops they made me jump through in order to pass their extensive security background check started to make me question whether this was really even worth messing with. Evidently, I must have met their quota because they did offer me the job. And that's when the second shoe fell. I learned that if I took the position, I would actually be working with a real live inmate. What the hell was I getting myself into? In the end, it was my sense of loss and sheer boredom that convinced me to go through with it, though I did feel a little better when they assured me that the woman I would be working with was incarcerated for a white-collar crime and I would essentially not be in any real danger. Famous last words. Cassandra Monroe was not exactly the most pleasant woman I have ever come into contact with. To be honest, she was an absolute nightmare from the moment we said hello, obviously blaming the world for her lot in life. I would come to realize much later, however, that she really did have good reason to feel this way. Our work was long and boring as we had to upgrade the operating systems on over 70 computers. Since they didn't want any leftover residue from the previous version to potentially cause problems down the road, we had to wipe each hard drive and start from scratch. This was a slow process and would have given us ample time to engage in conversation. Unfortunately, it became abundantly apparent early on that Cassandra had no desire to talk to me. It was about a week into our assignment when Cassandra came across her first problem machine. "This damn thing just won't work," she complained. "What seems to be the problem?" I asked. I keep getting this damn blue screen, she said. Here, why don't we switch computers? I suggested. What makes you think that you can do any better, genius? She asked. All I can do is try, I replied, smiling. Fine. She relented. I was getting sick of that piece of junk anyway, she said. The problem was easy to resolve, and I had it fixed in a matter of minutes. Seems to be loading fine now, I told her. How did you do that? She asked in amazement. These older machines sometimes don't respond very well with their hardware components. I ended up just changing a few IRQs in the BIOS. It seems to like this configuration much better, I explained. You're pretty good at this kind of stuff. So when are you going to start quizzing me about the money? She wanted to know. What money? I asked, totally confused by her question. You don't have to play dumb with me. You are not the first spy they have sent in to try and get me to crack. I will tell you what I told them. I'm innocent and have no idea where all that cash disappeared to, she stated. You'll have to forgive me, but I don't have the slightest idea what you're talking about. I told her. Yeah, right. Do you honestly think that I am going to believe some kid just happened to volunteer to work in a women's prison installing software on his summer break from school for no good reason? Face facts, you're after the money just like everybody else. The problem is, I don't have it and I have no idea who does, Cassandra said. I still didn't have a clue as to what money she was referring to, but the reason I was volunteering this summer was that my mother died last year, and my best friend for the past 6 years just recently moved halfway around the country. I was trying to find something to occupy my mind so that I wasn't constantly dwelling on it. A tear rolled down my cheek. You're telling the truth, aren't you? She asked. I figured that they would have told you all about me before having you start working here. All I was told about you is that you were pretty good with computers, the crime you were convicted of was white-collar, and I would essentially be in no danger while helping you, I admitted. Everything you just said is correct, but the truth is, I really am innocent. I don't have any idea what happened to the money, she told me. First of all, Cassandra, I still don't know what money you're referring to. And secondly, I believe you, I replied honestly. I'm talking about the $92 million that suddenly disappeared from the accounts I was managing at the investment firm I used to work for, she said while watching my face to gauge my reaction. Wow, that certainly is some huge hunk of change, I replied, totally shocked by the figure she just quoted. You really had no idea about the money? She asked in wonderment. No, ma'am, I didn't, I replied. You said you believed I was innocent. Do you still feel that way now that you know what I was convicted of? She asked. I'm sure of it, I replied, staring her straight in the eye. How can you possibly be so certain? We barely know each other, Cassandra asked. My mom was always a bit psychic. She even predicted that she would die young and tried to prepare Dad and me for it, but neither one of us wanted to believe her. She always said that I had a touch of the gift myself, though it was nowhere near as well developed as hers. She was able to teach me how to look into someone's soul to find the truth. I know you're not guilty, just as sure as I know my own name is Nathan Carter, and although it may take some time, I'm going to prove it and get you out of here, I assured her. Don't make promises you can't keep, was her quick reply. I never do. My father taught me. A man's word is his oath, I stated. You're just a boy, was her flippant response. Be that as it may, I am still going to get you out of here, I told her. Whatever, she replied, not believing I would actually do it. Why don't we talk about something else? She suggested. So from that point on, Cassandra and I started to share general aspects of our lives with one another. The two of us actually had many things in common. I learned that she was an only child and that both of her parents were deceased. She had to struggle through her accounting degree on mainly part-time jobs and student loans. It was her proficiency and excellent grades that landed her the job at Kingston Investment Firm. At that point, she thought her luck had actually started to turn around. She got a promotion and was finally earning a decent salary. She'd even met a guy and started having aspirations about becoming a wife and mother. That's when her life fell apart. Somehow, her passwords were used to steal massive amounts of money from client accounts. She had sole access to the funds, which totaled just over $92 million, and the money was never recovered. Since she wouldn't return the money, she was given the maximum sentence allowed by the state. Can you believe it? I have to stay in this hellhole for 45 years. My life is ruined, she said, wiping away the tears with her shirt. I won't let you stay in here for that long. No matter what it takes, I will find a way to prove your innocence, I stated with as much conviction as I could muster. I know you mean well, but there is really nothing you can do. Please stop making promises you can't keep, she said. A man's word is his bond. I told her as I was leaving. See you on Monday. The first thing I did when I got home that night was look up everything I could about her case. Since I truly believed that Cassandra was innocent, then it only stood to reason that someone had set her up. My job was to find the person or more likely persons responsible for doing so. I started compiling a list of anyone who was either directly or indirectly involved in Cassandra's life during that time period. I remembered creating a family tree for my genealogy class and used that same method for linking my suspects together. When it was time for work on Monday, I decided to keep Cassandra in the dark about what I was doing. I wanted to hear her story but was afraid she would get the impression that I was just after the money again. That was definitely not my motivation. As our friendship grew more intense, I had to always walk a fine line between trying to ascertain as much information as I could without making her feel like I was milking her for the story. I felt so sad to learn that basically everyone in Cassandra's life had abandoned her. I vowed that I would always be there for her, no matter what the outcome of my investigation revealed. As the weeks passed, it became clear to both of us that our time working together would soon be over. I suggested that she could add my name to her list of pre-approved visitors so that I could still see her after our job was finished. Nathan, I don't think it's healthy for you to be spending time with me instead of trying to find friends your own age, she said. Don't you think it should be my decision as to whom I choose to spend time with? I asked her. Not when you're obviously becoming too attached for your own good, Cassandra stated. I thought we were friends, I asked her. I can't afford to have friends at this stage of my life, she replied. Everybody needs friends, I assured her. Well, not me. And I especially don't need some lovesick teenager drooling all over the place. The girls already accuse me of robbing the cradle as it is, Cassandra told me. Look, I won't deny that I find you attractive, but I have never once said or done anything that was even remotely out of line, I argued. You don't have to, when desire is written all over your face, she challenged. I don't think I'm such a bad guy, I said defensively. That is part of the problem. You're not a guy. You're just a kid, she told me. Maybe so, but I am the kid that's going to get you out of here, I stated with conviction. Would you just stop saying that? We both know it's never going to happen, she yelled, causing the guards to look our way. Look, I give you my word. I am working on getting you set free. It will just take a little more time, that's all, I tried to convince her. Do you really expect me to have any faith in some schoolboy? She asked. I'm not your average schoolboy, I told her. Fine. If you're so gifted, then you won't have any problems finishing the rest of this by yourself, because I quit, she exclaimed as she bellowed for the guard to take her back to her cell. Although I pleaded with her not to go, Cassandra refused to relent, leaving the remainder of our work for me to deal with on my own. I, of course, completely understood where she was coming from. I knew it was stupid to keep bringing up the fact that I was working on getting her released, but I was just so desperate to give her some degree of hope that I couldn't keep my damn mouth shut. Now she wouldn't even talk to me. It didn't take long for me to finish up our little project, and then I once again found myself with too much time on my hands. Rather than sit around being bitter about it, I decided to focus all of my energy into solving Cassandra's case. I knew she was still angry with me, but that didn't mean I could go back on my promise to help her. Even if she had suggested I really was just a lovesick schoolboy, I had it in the back of my mind that there was probably more than one person responsible for framing Cassandra. I tried to do what they showed on TV and put myself in the mindset of the criminal. I focused on how I would go about pulling off such a crime while deflecting the blame onto someone else. It wasn't always easy for me to get my head around this form of debauchery, as I actually started feeling guilty at times over my own thought process. I had to treat this as a type of game before I could get fully immersed in my goal to unravel the perfect crime. After reviewing all of the facts, I felt compelled to focus mainly on her ex-boyfriend, Marcus Holloway, as my primary suspect. I really don't know what drew me to him exactly, except that whenever Cassandra would speak of their relationship, I would get the distinct impression that things weren't quite as wonderful as she made them out to be. There was just something about her description of the man that didn't fit with my profile of what a loving boyfriend was supposed to be. I just hoped that I wasn't allowing my jealousy of him to cloud my better judgment. It took almost no time at all to track down old Marcus's whereabouts, and once I did, I started to gather a pretty substantial amount of circumstantial evidence against the man. I knew that nothing I had discovered so far would be enough to overturn Cassandra's conviction, but I at least felt I was making some sort of progress in that direction. For it to happen, though, I would surely have to recover the missing $92 million. Only then would I have enough leverage to get the Justice Department to reopen the case. As luck, or perhaps maybe fate, would have it, Marcus's current address showed that he lived in the same city as my Aunt Linda on my mother's side. When I brought up that I wanted to go for a visit, Dad was all for the idea. He was never really crazy about the fact that I was working in a women's prison to begin with, and when I started discussing my friendship with Cassandra, I could tell he was starting to get concerned about how close we were becoming. To avoid arguments, I basically stopped mentioning her to him altogether. I know he was thinking that this trip would help get my mind off of her, but if he even suspected what my real motives were for going, I'm sure that shit would have most definitely hit the fan. In all actuality, it was really great to see Aunt Linda again, and since she and her husband both worked the day shift, I was pretty much left to my own devices until they arrived back home sometime after 6 p.m. each night. I quickly found Marcus's place of residence, and for nearly 2 weeks straight, I stalked him relentlessly, desperately hoping that he would eventually slip up and possibly lead me to where he stashed the stolen loot. It was nearing the end of my stay with Aunt Linda that I suddenly hit pay dirt. I was tailing Marcus on the subway when I noticed him removing what looked to be a laptop case out of a locker. He then proceeded to the nearest coffee shop, where he ordered lunch. I watched him take out his laptop and log on to their free Wi-Fi connection. I quickly booted up my own laptop and hacked into his system through their non-secured line. Did I mention before that the advanced lessons Mr. Wells had taught Ethan and me were in the field of computer hacking? Gerald showed us the basics, but it was through my own skill and determination that I advanced to the level I am today, which, by the way, is damn good if I do say so myself. As I sat there letting my PC record everything the scumsucker was doing, I knew that I finally had the son of a bitch right where I wanted him. Now it was time to call in the big guns. I am sure the representative from Kingston Investment Firm was curious as to why I made an appointment to see him, especially after I requested that not only their attorney, one of their claims adjusters, and their best IT expert be present in the meeting, but also that I wanted the top man in charge of building the case against Cassandra to be there as well. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for meeting with me today," I said as we proceeded to get comfortable in their conference room. I was then introduced to the 5 guys who I had asked to be at the meeting. Mr. Thomas Reynolds was the senior accounts manager for Kingston Investment Firm and obviously the leader of the group. Next to him was their claims adjuster, Alan Bishop. Off to the left sat Louis Grayson, Kingston's top IT geek, and last but certainly not least was Bill Murphy, Kingston's head of security and the man who built the case against Cassandra. This was certainly going to be one very interesting meeting. "Mr. Carter, you said that you had a matter of substantial monetary importance to discuss with us?" Mr. Reynolds asked. "That is correct, sir. I have recently come across some new information that I would like to share with you regarding Cassandra Monroe," I said. "That case was settled months ago," Mr. Reynolds told me. "You convicted the wrong person. Cassandra is innocent," I stated with conviction. "I can assure you, son, that regardless of whatever lies she has been feeding you, she most certainly is guilty." "I should know, as I am the one who built the case against her," Mr. Murphy replied. "Excuse me for saying so, sir, but you didn't do shit," I countered. "I came up with so much proof that supported her innocence, I started to wonder if you weren't in on the attempt to frame her yourself. I have since revised that theory, as I could not come up with any link between you and the real culprits," I answered back sternly. "This is ridiculous. Why are we even here wasting our time with this kid in the first place?" Mr. Murphy asked. "I agree, Bill," Mr. Reynolds replied before turning to me and saying, "Mr. Carter, I think we are done here," he said with a gruff demeanor. "On the contrary, gentlemen, we are just getting started. That is, if you ever want to see your $92 million again," I threatened. "You don't even know how much was stolen." "Ms. Monroe took $92 million, not $94 million, Mr. Bishop corrected me, speaking for the first time since our introduction. "For a claims adjuster, you of all people should know how fast interest can accumulate, especially when we are talking about that much cash," I replied. "So you're saying that she has it stored in a bank somewhere?" Mr. Reynolds asked. "No, you obviously weren't listening. She has no idea where the money went or who set her up, but I do," I told him. "Okay, so where is it then?" Mr. Murphy asked. "Not so fast, guys. We have a few things to settle before I hand out that information," I told them. "Don't worry. If you can help us recover the missing funds, you will get the $600,000 reward money," Mr. Reynolds assured me. "No, I won't. The money is to go to Cassandra Monroe for all the shit you have put her through. That is, of course, after you help me get her released from prison. By the way, I don't just want her conviction overturned. I want her record completely expunged. No trace of it. Is that understood?" I asked sternly. This is ridiculous. How can we be assured that you even know where the money is to begin with? Mr. Murphy asked. Here is the account and routing number to a bank in Switzerland. I'm sure you can verify for yourself that the money is in there. I know you won't be able to transfer any funds without the username and password, and I am holding on to that information until we reach an agreement, I told them. It looked like Mr. Bishop was about to shit his pants when he came back into the room and confirmed that $92 million in change was indeed sitting in the account I had provided. This was by far the closest any of them had ever been to recovering the missing funds. Okay, Mr. Carter, what exactly do you want? Mr. Reynolds asked. First of all, sir, please call me Nathan. Mr. Carter is my father. Secondly, in addition to what I have already stated, I want complete and total amnesty for myself regarding any illegal actions I may have taken to obtain the evidence I am prepared to present to you, I told them. That would be up to the district attorney, Mr. Murphy informed me. I realized that, but since she refused to come to this meeting, I figured that I could get you gentlemen up to speed on what I discovered first. Then it would be easier to convince her to get on board with this as well, I told them. All right, Nathan. We are ready to listen, Mr. Reynolds said. First of all, I need to make a confession. I am a computer hacker, and without trying to brag about my abilities, I would have to say that I am very good at it, I told them. Okay, Nathan, I can relate to what you're saying, but how does that affect Ms. Monroe's case? Louis Grayson asked. These are the instructions on how to design a very unique type of hacking device that, when connected to someone's computer, will not only send information back to the owner of the device without being detected, but will also let someone else completely take over the affected machine, making it seem like the instructions were coming directly from the machine itself. A parts list of everything needed to build such a device is on the second page. Here is a list of the items sent by various retailers to a post office box opened by Marcus Holloway about a month before the money disappeared from Cassandra's client accounts. You will notice that every part on the list was delivered just days apart from one another, I pointed out. How can we be sure these lists are authentic? Mr. Reynolds asked. That is why I requested Mr. Grayson's presence here at this meeting, so he could confirm everything I show you, I told them. I'll tell you, even if what you're saying is true, it proves absolutely nothing, Mr. Murphy said. On its own, you are correct. But combined with some of the other evidence I have gathered, I have no doubt that before this meeting is over, all of you will feel as I do, that Ms. Monroe is completely innocent in this matter, I replied. So who do you think is responsible for taking the money? Mr. Reynolds wanted to know. It was actually a joint venture between both Marcus Holloway, who was Cassandra's boyfriend at the time, and another woman who works here by the name of Julia Whitmore, I said. That is ridiculous. I checked both these people out myself, and not only was I unable to find them guilty of any wrongdoing outside of a traffic violation, but I found no evidence whatsoever to suggest that they even knew one another, Mr. Murphy replied. You obviously didn't dig deep enough. Did you know that they were high school sweethearts? I asked. That is not possible. They didn't even attend the same school together and lived in different cities, Mr. Murphy told me. That may be true, but here is a copy of their prom picture. Do you recognize anyone? I asked, smiling. This can't be. How did they even meet? Mr. Murphy wanted to know. Well, according to this genealogy report, Julia's parents lived right next door to Marcus's grandparents. I would say it is likely that they met while he was visiting them, I suggested. Even if they did know each other, that doesn't prove that they stole the money, Mr. Reynolds stated. Well, guys, since I haven't even scratched the surface of what I uncovered, you may want to have lunch brought in because this meeting is going to last a while, I suggested. Look, I've had enough of this. We have video evidence that shows Ms. Monroe sitting at her desk during the time the money was stolen. How do you plan to explain away that? Mr. Murphy asked. That brings up my next point, sir. Have you taken a really good look at your video? I wanted to know. Of course I have. It clearly shows Ms. Monroe sitting at her desk with her back turned towards the camera during the time that our client accounts were being drained from her computer. He stated proudly. Let's just take another quick peek at it, shall we? I am sure that you gentlemen won't mind if I plug this into your projector screen. That way we can all see it at once. I suggested as I proceeded to pull the video up on my laptop. How did you get a hold of that video? Mr. Murphy asked. I already answered that, sir. I am a computer hacker, remember? I answered. But our server is completely secure, Louis Grayson said. Mr. Grayson, you of all people should know that no server is ever completely secure. I admit you have it locked down fairly well, but you would have to close off a few more ports before I would consider it a challenge. And even then, I could still get past your security systems. It would just take me a little longer, that's all, I said, completely shocking the poor IT manager who thought his system was nearly impenetrable. Okay, gentlemen, let's get back on track for a bit. Can we all agree that this is the video shot on the day the money disappeared from your client's accounts? I asked. Once they all affirmed, I ran the file through one of my video enhancing programs, focusing on a spot where light was bouncing off a glass door. When I zoomed in, you could clearly make out the mirror image of Cassandra's reflection. She's eating lunch. Her monitor isn't even on, Mr. Murphy exclaimed. That's right. And if you continue watching, you will see that she never even turns it back on until after she finishes eating. Which, by the way, is after the money transfer took place. I said that I can't believe we had this video the entire time and no one ever noticed this, Mr. Reynolds said, stunned. If you think that's unbelievable, just wait till you see this next part, I replied. I switched to the next video clip, where Julia Whitmore came into Cassandra's office and conveniently spilled her soda all over the floor. Naturally, Julia bent down on her hands and knees, trying to quickly clean up the mess she made, while Cassandra ran to the ladies' room to get some extra paper towels. I zoomed in once again as the camera caught Julia's reflection, and we all watched her remove some type of electrical device from Cassandra's computer and stick it in her purse. Just in case you're wondering, gentlemen, I also have the clip of Ms. Whitmore planting this device as well. It seems the poor woman can be quite clumsy at times, I told them. I'll admit that on the surface, this evidence appears to be quite damaging. But how can we be certain what the device actually was? I mean, for all we know, it might have just been an MP3 player, Mr. Murphy suggested. Well, this is where things start to get complicated. How much do any of you know about cell phones and satellites? I asked. I once worked installing satellite TV, so I would say I am quite versed on the subject, Lewis Grayson stated. Good. Then you are aware that phone signals are bounced off of satellites and beamed to their desired locations? I asked. Of course I am. But how does that pertain to this case? He wanted to know. Cassandra's ex-boyfriend, Marcus Holloway, keeps a laptop in a locker at the subway station. I discovered this when I was tailing him earlier this week. After retrieving it from his hiding place, he proceeded to the nearest coffee shop, where he not only had lunch but accessed his account to check on the money. As I recorded him doing this, I hacked into their non-secure router and copied everything I could from his hard drive before he terminated the connection. It was when I reviewed his internet history that I came across the plans for the hacking device I gave you earlier. As you can see, the reason it is so effective is that it uses a nearly untraceable TracFone data account to connect to its host, I explained. So, if it is untraceable, how does that help us recover the stolen money? Mr. Reynolds asked. I didn't say that it was untraceable. I said it was nearly untraceable. You see, sir, cell phone signals are not only beamed off of cell towers, they also bounce off of each other. Does everyone here understand how sonar works? I asked. Of course I know how sonar works. You are talking to an ex-Marine, son, Mr. Reynolds replied. Good. Then you are aware that pulses are sent through the water, and when they bounce off something, it can be determined not only the size of the object but also how far away it is. I explained, mainly for the benefit of the other gentleman. That is an adequate description, son. But how does it pertain to this situation? Mr. Reynolds asked. Well, sir, cell phones can work pretty much the same way as sonar. I may not be able to trace a track phone signal because it is tied to a usage card rather than a person's account. However, if the signal bounces off of a contract phone, I can trace that and find out not only who the phone belongs to but also how far away it is from the other device. If the contract phone happens to be a smartphone with GPS capabilities, I can reverse the signal and trace it back to the phone in question, I explained. I seriously doubt that you could do something like that, Mr. Grayson challenged. Well, I can prove it to you, sir. But I have a few more pieces of evidence to present before I do, I stated. I would like to hear about this so-called evidence as well, came a voice from the doorway. Oh, please come in, Mrs. Marsh. Gentlemen, this is State's District Attorney Tabitha Marsh. Good afternoon, ma'am, I said, standing up and extending my hand to greet her, as my dad always taught me to do. I am glad you could finally join us today, I said sincerely. Thank you, Nathan. Though from the sound of Mr. Reynolds' voice, it appeared I didn't have all that much of a choice, she said. Well, now that you are here, Nathan was about to explain just how he managed to ascertain certain evidence that the rest of us overlooked, Mr. Murphy said. Before I go any further, since a member of the court system is now present, I must once again insist on immunity to protect myself from prosecution, I told them. Don't worry, Nathan. Mr. Reynolds has already informed me of all of your demands over the phone. If you can help us recover the missing money and prove to my satisfaction that Ms. Monroe is innocent, then I see no problem granting you most of what you requested, she said. What does that mean? I asked. If you can show me that Ms. Monroe was not involved with the missing funds, I should have no problem overturning her conviction and getting her released from prison. It is very difficult, however, to convince the judge to completely expunge someone's record unless you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are innocent, she explained. I think with the evidence I have, I will be able to do just that. However, I am concerned about the methods I used to obtain that evidence, I told her. Don't be, Nathan, because I am prepared to grant you full immunity as long as you only used your hacking skills to gather information rather than alter it, Mrs. Marsh assured me. No offense, ma'am, but can I please have that in writing before we continue? I requested. No offense taken, young man, she said, sliding the already signed and notarized document over to me. We took a few minutes to fill Mrs. Marsh in on what was discussed so far and get her up to speed on the evidence I had already presented. Okay, as I was saying, cell phone signals bounce off of one another much like sonar does. What most people are unaware of is that cell phone companies not only track these signals but they archive their paths as well, in case there is ever a dispute over usage. I pulled up the archive from this building for the day in question and discovered that there was a track phone data signal being sent from within 24 inches of Cassandra's desk. That corresponded with not only the time that the money transfer took place but also when she was eating lunch as well. I tracked that signal and found that it bounced off of a smartphone that was only 12 inches away from it. I later determined that phone's owner to be Marcus Holloway. Curiously, I was able to detect another track phone signal, and again, it was within inches of Marcus's smartphone. I started researching the usage of that phone and discovered that the vast majority of calls, both made and received, could be traced to another track phone user. As luck would have it, this user also had a smartphone, and I was able to determine that it belonged to Julia Whitmore. This disk contains all the times that the pair used these phones to talk to one another. Since they were purchased by Ms. Whitmore with her credit card a month before this incident took place, the evidence is clear, I told them, handing over the disk. How can we be sure these are the phones that Ms. Whitmore purchased when the stores don't keep track of the phone serial numbers when they are sold? Mrs. Marsh questioned. They may not record the serial numbers, but they do have to scan the activation codes for the phone cards, which she purchased along with the phones that day. There is a link showing those cards were used for both phones. By the way, on the day the funds were stolen, there was a call to Ms. Whitmore's track phone immediately following the money transfer and just prior to her little accident in Cassandra's office, where she removed the electronic device from Cassandra's computer. In case you're wondering, that call came from Marcus Holloway's track phone, I told them. That is a very fascinating story, Nathan, but I still don't believe a word of it. Hell, I have been working with computers for the last 25 years, and I can't even do what you suggest, Mr. Grayson challenged. I am afraid I am having a hard time swallowing this one myself, Mrs. Marsh admitted. If you assure me that I am still under immunity, I would be happy to prove I can do what I claim, I told them. Seriously? And just how do you propose to do that? She asked. Have Mr. Reynolds go out into the hall and pick one of his employees. But don't bother telling me which one he chooses, as I am sure I will be able to reveal that information to you in due time on my own. Make sure they have a smartphone and that they take it with them and keep it turned on. Send them to a store to buy a track phone, and then have them pick a restaurant and go there for lunch. Tell them to call one of you on your cell phones using the track phone once they get to wherever they are going, and I will tell you who they are, where they are, and who is sitting next to them. By the way, no tricks like switching cell phones or something. Remember, I am doing this to help you retrieve your missing money and get an unjustly convicted woman out of prison. Please respect that, I requested. Mr. Reynolds took me up on my challenge, and we all sat around discussing the case until a call came in on his cell phone about 20 minutes later. With Mr. Grayson looking over my shoulder in awe, I quickly determined that the caller was Stephanie Harper, and that she was at Lorenzo's restaurant on Lincoln Avenue. I asked Mr. Reynolds to tell her that there was a 50-year-old gentleman sitting about 15 feet away from her by the name of James Preston. Instead of possibly spooking the man, I requested that she walk up and pretend to know him, making up a fake name and claiming that he looked very much like someone she used to know in high school. Mrs. Harper was also around 50 years old. We all listened on Mr. Reynolds' speakerphone as their conversation took place with predictable, at least for me that is, results. When she was out of Mr. Preston's earshot, Stephanie wanted to know how we knew where she was and who was beside her. Mr. Reynolds wisely told her that was not important right now and advised her to finish her lunch, which was on the company's dime, and head back to the office. After Mr. Reynolds ended the call, I tried to answer the rest of their questions, and we replayed the video clips of Julia Whitmore planting and then removing the hacking device from Cassandra's computer. Damn, now they have me sounding like a lawyer. It took another 2 weeks for us to get an appointment with a federal judge, and a week after that before any action was taken on Cassandra's behalf. I was told that the process was greatly expedited due to the level of injustice that Ms. Monroe was subjected to. What a crock of shit. I knew they didn't give a damn about Cassandra. All they wanted was their money back, and I was not going to give that up until I was sure she would be released. By this time, my dad found out what was going on. To say he wasn't pleased would have been an understatement. I know he grudgingly respected me for keeping my word and helping to bring a miscarriage of justice to an end, but he definitely didn't like the way I went about it, especially using my trip to Aunt Linda's house primarily to spy on Marcus Holloway. After talking with Linda, and her confirming that I did spend nearly every evening I was there with them, and that she gave me free rein to do whatever I wanted during the day, Dad came to realize that my visit really wasn't a hoax and that I did what most people do when visiting relatives: mix a little business with pleasure. He reluctantly gave in and said he was proud of me. In the end, there really wasn't much else he could do anyway, as it was now a legal matter and completely out of his hands. I fought with myself as to whether I should be at the prison when Cassandra heard the news about her release. I so would have loved to see the look on her face when she found out that I had kept my word. But the last thing I wanted was for her to feel like I expected anything in return or that she owed me for helping her. In the end, I justified not going by claiming that I had already missed my first week as a high school senior and that I needed to get caught back up with my classes. Yeah, like I really gave a damn about that. I did get a rather unexpected surprise, however, when Mr. Reynolds presented me with my very own check for $600,000. I started to argue that it was supposed to go to Cassandra, but he assured me that she received one as well. He said that his company had recently doubled its reward offer in an attempt to get information that would lead them to the missing money. He purposely kept his mouth shut about it until the deal was signed because he felt that I deserved to be compensated for all the effort I put into recovering the missing money and helping to correct a major injustice. I was also offered open-ended jobs by both Mr. Reynolds to help beef up their server security and by Mrs. Marsh as an investigator for the state. Unfortunately, if I ever decided to work for her, I would have to dispense with a lot of my hacking, as most of the evidence I would uncover using these skills would not be admissible if they were presented by a court-appointed representative. I decided, for the time being, just to be a regular student and perhaps take Mr. Reynolds up on his offer when I finished high school. I obviously didn't need the money, and now with $600,000 in the bank, Dad and I no longer had to worry about where my college funds would come from. I knew this was a huge load off his mind, and I was grateful for the opportunity to reduce the burdens on him. I hadn't heard a thing from Cassandra since she was released, and I just assumed she moved away and got on with her life. A birthday surprise. My birthday always coincided with the Thanksgiving holiday. Growing up, it kind of sucked. Don't get me wrong. I loved the fact that I was always out of school on my birthday, but I hated that we could never really plan anything special to do because it was usually either too cold outside for one thing, or since Thanksgiving was so close, even if I had friends to do something with, they wouldn't have been able to spare the time to be with me. This year was shaping up to be the worst of all. It was the first birthday I would spend without either my mother or Ethan. To top it off, Dad was called away on business and wouldn't be home to celebrate with me either. If I were being honest, I think he planned it this way because he just couldn't deal with facing the day without my mother. Mom absolutely loved Thanksgiving. She would always fix a huge meal and then be all giddy about getting up early the next morning and shopping for sales. This was the first year that I would ever have any real money, and I didn't give a damn about going anywhere to spend it. As I was walking home to what I knew would be an empty house, I was wondering what I was going to do with myself for the week. I know it would be most teenagers' dream to have the house to themselves, but to me it just seemed lonely. As expected, there was a card on the table from Dad and another in the mailbox from Ethan, but what I really wanted more than anything was just someone to talk to. I must have fallen asleep on the couch because I was woken up by the doorbell ringing. Figuring it was probably just some neighbor Dad had conned into checking on me, I was definitely not at my best when I opened the door, only to get the shock of my life. "Cassandra, what are you doing here?" I asked. "Well, I came to see you, silly. You didn't think I would miss being here on your birthday, did you?" she asked. "Why wouldn't I think that? First, you got mad and wouldn't let me come visit you in prison. And then when you were released, I didn't hear a single word from you for months," I complained. "I was in shock on the day they released me. One minute I was sitting in my jail cell, thinking that I would probably be there for the rest of my life, and the next thing I knew, they were handing me a check for $600,000 and telling me I was free to go. They even said that my record was wiped clean of any wrongdoing, and that I would never have to admit to being incarcerated on a job application because there would no longer be any evidence of it. Can you even imagine what that felt like? She asked. No, I can't. But it has been months since your release. Why haven't you at least tried to contact me? I asked. Well, I did call and talk with your father, she started to say. You what? I asked, completely shocked for the second time tonight. Yeah. We decided that it would be best if I waited to contact you until I was a bit more stable, she admitted. So you're still treating me like a child? Calling to ask my daddy if it's all right for you to visit? I said with utter annoyance. I did not mean for you to take it that way, she said. How could I possibly take it any other way when I am not allowed to decide for myself who I want to be friends with? I asked her. Look, perhaps this wasn't the best idea for me to come here. Maybe I should just go, she said while turning toward the door. That's right, run away again just like you did when we were working together, I told her. Don't you understand how hard that was for me? I was becoming too attached and knew you would be leaving soon. I was so depressed in that place. I never let anyone get near me. And then you came along and were my link to the outside world. My problem was that the closer we became, the more I knew I would never truly be a part of that world. It was like freedom was dangling on a string, near enough for me to almost feel it, but yet so far away that it would take literally a lifetime to achieve. I had no choice but to run. She wept, her voice choked with emotion. Oh God, Cassandra, please don't cry. I know I went about it all wrong, and I shouldn't have kept telling you that I was working on getting you released. But I was just so desperate to be able to offer you at least some degree of hope that I couldn't keep my damn mouth shut. I'm so sorry that I hurt you. Can you ever forgive me for being so insensitive? I begged. Forgive you? Nathan, you kept your promise. Hell, you did more than keep your promise. Baby, I saw the tape. You know Mr. Reynolds recorded your entire meeting, right? She asked. Yes, I was expecting him to. It didn't matter. I had more than enough evidence to reopen the case, even without the money. Once I had that as well, nothing was going to stop me from accomplishing what I set out to do. I told her that I just have to ask. Why did you want me to have the reward money when you were the one who discovered the truth? She wanted to know. Hey, I got my share of the money as well, I argued. Yeah, but Mr. Reynolds had to trick you into taking it. If he would have told you about the extra $600,000 before the deal was signed, you would have insisted that I got that as well, wouldn't you? She asked. Yes. You can have it now if you want, I told her. I am not taking one dime of that money. It's yours, and you more than earned it. What I don't understand is why you wanted to give it away. She wanted to know. Cassandra, I worked for about a month gathering evidence to get you released, but you had your entire life ripped out from under you. When we first met, it was clear to see that you hated the world. Then, when you started to let me in, I got just a little glimpse of the woman you used to be, and it was sickening to know how much they broke your spirit. I was telling the truth when I said I believed that you were innocent. I knew because that is what my heart saw every time I looked at you. When I asked myself who deserved the money more, I didn't even have to think about it to come up with the answer. I explained while watching her tears start flowing again. I asked you to stop crying. I teased as I dabbed her cheeks with a soft Kleenex. I'll try, but I just have to ask. What made you suspect Marcus? Hell, even I didn't think he had anything to do with what happened. She needed to know. I'm not really sure of that one myself. I suppose that part of it could have been jealousy, but I guess the real reason is that your description of the man just didn't match my definition of a loving boyfriend, I confessed. You were actually jealous of Marcus? She asked. Why wouldn't I be? Marcus was your man. I was merely just some schoolboy nerd there to help fix the computers, I replied honestly. Hell, the reason I was teased so much is because they were jealous themselves. I had an actual friend on the outside that I could meet with regularly, and they didn't. When they found out that you were the one most influential in getting me released, they all gave me a message for you, she said. And that would be? I asked. If you could do the same thing for any of them, they would make damn sure that nobody would ever be able to call you a boy again. They even went so far as to say that the first thing I should do upon my release is to find you, check into the nearest motel, and not let you leave until you couldn't get it up again for a month, she told me. As much as I would love for you to do that, I got you released because it was the right thing to do, not so you would be grateful enough to take my virginity, I told her. I actually feel the same way, she said, momentarily crushing my dreams of being with her tonight. That is part of the reason I waited so long to contact you. I wanted to be sure what I felt was more than just gratitude. You deserve that, she finished. So, how do you feel about me? I asked, not really sure I wanted to know the answer. That is really a difficult question to explain. I have so many emotions when it comes to you, and let's be honest, gratitude is among them. But there really is more to it than that. I am attracted to you, both in body and soul. I realized that when we were working together and it frightened me. To be honest, it still frightens me, she admitted. Why are you afraid? Would I hurt you? I wanted to know. No, never that. I'm just concerned about you becoming too attached to me and not trying to find a girl your own age afterwards. Cassandra tried to explain. So it really is just about gratitude, then? It's okay for us to have sex. But I am not good enough to consider dating long-term? I asked. It has nothing to do with you not being good enough, but I am several years older than you. I have also been through some devastating experiences, which have permanently changed my outlook on the world. I am just not sure that we would be compatible long-term, she confessed. My mom was the only one I knew who could predict the future, and unfortunately, she is not around anymore to ask. I admit that I have been attracted to you from the beginning, but I feel more than that for you now. I am not sure what it will lead to, but if you feel the same for me, don't we at least owe it to ourselves and each other to give dating a try? I argued. But what if it doesn't work out? She asked. Then we get hurt. We heal or stay bitter, and finally we move on, just like everybody else, I said. After our long conversation, Cassandra stayed with me throughout the extended weekend. She even fixed a small turkey breast for the two of us to help commemorate the holiday. Although I missed my family, just having her around kept the loneliness at bay and gave me something to be thankful for. And I am not just talking about the sex. By the time she had to return to her apartment, I had reluctantly convinced her to try and give our relationship a chance, despite our 7-year age difference. Although we didn't have everything in common, I felt that we shared enough interests to make it work. And besides, the both of us truly cared for one another. That was something her previous relationship surely lacked. Life is a series of choices. Some are easy, others define us. I made a promise to help someone when she had nobody else to turn to, and in the process, I found not just a purpose, but a love that was real. Cassandra Monroe was no longer a prisoner. Neither was I. We were free to explore, to learn, and to love. And that, to me, was the greatest reward of all.